Welcome back to Built in the West, the podcast where we sit down with the builders, the doers, and the real ones shaping the American West. I'm your host, Jesse B. Lucero, alongside Kelly, and today this is what the West is all about. Today's guests don't just talk about the Western lifestyle, they live it every single day. We're joined by Milee and Mike Daly, based out of Prey, Montana, operators of Horse Track Outfitters and Horse Track Performance Horses. A family-built operation rooted deep in the land, the horses, and the legacy of the West. To backcountry hunting trips in some of the most remote terrain in the lower 48, to training performance horses and raising the next generation. These two have built something most people only dream about. This isn't a highlight reel. This isn't a social media Western. This is a real story. The early mornings, the long miles, the grit, the sacrifice, and purpose behind building a life most people will never fully understand. They come from deep roots in Montana with family history tied into the very land they ride, preserving a way of life that's slowly disappearing but still alive through people like them. So today we're diving into it all. What it really takes to run an outfitting business, the truth about Yellowstone most people never see, building multiple businesses as a family, the Western lifestyle beyond the myths, and what it means to build something that lasts for generations. If you've ever wondered what it truly takes to live free in the West, this episode is just for you. Milee and Mike, welcome to the show. Let's dive into it.
Let's start from the beginning. Where did it all start for you both?
We've both been around horses our entire lives and grew up in Paradise Valley, Montana. I've rodeoed pretty much my whole life, grew up through junior rodeos and high school, college, and then into the professional rodeos.
And how about Mike, as far as like the outfitting and guiding business? Like, what really, drew him into that part, becoming more of a lifestyle into a business?
I started guiding right out of high school and just got to where I didn't want to work for anybody. Wanted to be our own business and our own, kind of in control of our own destiny. And so we, in like 2016, things just started coming together. I bought a hunting camp in Cody basically on a contract on a napkin. And then Milee kept saying she wanted a job where she could ride her own horses, or she wanted to ride her own horses. So she went to a barrel race one day and I drove to Roberts and bought our summer business. And so here we are.
Nice. So how many, because we'll talk about like your guys' trail rides first, because I think that's, coming up, and I know you guys are already booked or taking bookings and things like that. So that's one thing I want to get highlighted out there for you guys, sooner rather than later. So where do you guys actually take people on these horseback rides?
So we offer a variety of different ride options. Most popular ride is our half day in Yellowstone Park, which is on the northern end of Yellowstone, in between typically Mammoth and Tower Junction. So that's about a 4-hour trip. The majority of our riders have very little experience, but it's a great way to see Yellowstone Park away from the crowds. That's always been our slogan, is seeing Yellowstone away from the crowds.
And we're one of the only ride companies. We're not a volume-based company. We do it private parties. We don't take big, long. We'll take a big group, but it's all a group. We don't mix and match, and it just makes it really nice because you're traveling and you're riding with your people. You don't have a random person messing up your ride. It's just all set where it's more of a quality experience than a quantity experience. Everybody in Yellowstone that does business in Yellowstone is about how many can we take? No, it doesn't matter if they have a great time, as long as, everybody does a great job that's in our business, but we didn't want these big, long trains of people. We didn't want to be in the people herding business. We wanted to take people and have a more intimate experience, visit with them and get to know them a little bit. And tell them, sell the West a little bit, agriculture and Montana history and stuff that they're not going to get, some other places.
Oh, that's very true.
So what does a normal day look like for you guys?
Our day usually starts about 6 a.m. going in, wrangling horses and catching and saddling and grading them before we head out, feed our crew breakfast first, and then we leave the house around 8 o'clock and head out either to Yellowstone or to our 2-hour ride option, which is on a private ranch just south of Livingston.
So when someone books a ride or experience with you, what usually goes on behind the scenes that they never get to see?
Well, a lot of times people, they want to meet us at like 7 a.m., but they don't realize all the logistics for us to actually get to the trailhead.
You know, and we're not doing this one day a week. That's the thing these people don't realize is, you know, we're doing this every day. I mean, if they called you and asked you to come to your office to change your hours, you know, you just can't do it. At some point, you've got to put some parameters in there so you can keep your life organized.
Right.
Well, I mean, and I think, you know, there's that whole misconception. People just think that, oh, the horses are just there and they're ready to go. And it's like, they don't understand, like you say, Milee, you're up at, you know, and I think you're probably being generous when you say 6 a.m. to gather the horses, because I'm assuming you guys trailer the horses from here or somewhere nearby, and you have to take them all up there to meet the people. So
yeah,
it's
an hour and a half commute for us.
And it's pretty streamlined. I mean, we've got a good system. We've got, you know, ways we want our tack put up. You know, as we catch our horses, we catch them by the, you know, as we tie them up, we tie them up like these horses are going on this ride and these horses are going on this ride. And then you just go off your sheets. You know, the people that reserve, they send us a sheet that tells us how tall they are, their approximate weight, their riding experience. I mean, this deal it's tailored to them. It's not, you know, we're just going to throw them on a random horse, you know, and then we get them all saddled, running and eat breakfast. I usually load trailers while they're eating breakfast and get the horses ready to go. But I mean, by, you know, in less than 2 hours, we'll saddle everything we need for the day and have them loaded and on the road and sent. It's just, you know, for the people that work for us, they've got to be able to pay attention to, you know, details of, you know, what saddles fit what horses suit certain types of riders. And we've had kids come work for us that have worked for these big factory day ride outfits, and they don't make it. They just, I mean, because you have to do more than just be a cog. You have to actually think about, does this saddle fit this horse? Is this horse, you know, there's more to it. Guest riding business, but there's more to it than, you know, running 40 head of horses in an alley and slapping a saddle on them. And, you know, for the kids that want to learn, they learn a lot about horses and equipment and just being organized.
So, Mike, what's something people assume about your business that's completely wrong?
That it's a quick way to make a buck.
Oh, yeah. Horses are expensive. You know, people don't realize, you know, the feed, the care, and all that goes into them. And you guys, you don't even own most of the horses. You're leasing them, correctly?
We lease them through a horse leasing company, and the guy's phenomenal. He provides client horses for a lot of the big dude ranches all throughout Montana, Wyoming, clear down here in Arizona. And, you know, and you just, as a small business, like ours, you can't afford to put together 50 head of horses. It costs you $300,000 if you got it right on the first horse every time, you know, and so the beauty of our leasing deal is, you know, we get the same horses year in and year out. You know, we got an arrangement with him, you know, but if we get horses that don't work, and that don't fit our program, we just call him, you know, he swaps them out the way we go.
Yeah.
You know, it's the horse deal, and you got to have great horses to do this, because if you're riding around with a bunch of horses that make you worry about them, you can't do this job.
No. Well, especially when you've got, you know, so many tourists that have such a misconception of, you know, going on a horseback ride and having no, you know, experience. And then, you know, you get these people that come out here and think that, oh, we're on a horse, and, you know, they don't understand, you know, like, even though these horses are well broken, are used to those trails. I mean, there's always, you know, the unknowns of things that could happen, you know, I mean, and I know sometimes I've seen people like push the horses, to see how far they can go, like, oh, let's see if this horse can really run. And you're like, no, we only walk these horses.
Yeah. I swear that's the number one question people ask when they call. They're like,
These people, they want us, they're like, well, we watched a video from this guest ranch and they gallop the horses. And that is correct. But that guest ranch has them people for year after year sometimes. And they have them for 7 or 8 days. They have them for a week. And they start them out in an arena and they gallop around and they kind of have a process of elimination, so to speak, to find out who can go on a galloping ride. And there's not a lot of places where we ride that are good for an inexperienced rider to just go galloping around. And after you've cow-killed about 25 people, your insurance company's like, you're a bad risk, and without the insurance, you can't operate.
No.
They just don't understand that. And part of our way we've set our deal up, we're not a bargain to come ride with us. There's plenty of places that are cheaper, and that's the beauty of a free market deal. But we get 9 times out of 10, we get people that are serious about going for a ride, and those are the people we want. We're not, and that's just part of how we're set up. We're not dealing with the tour bus crowd, and right. Those people are important to tourism too, but our people are coming to us. They want to go for a ride with their people, and that's what makes us work.
No, that's awesome. So how many years have you guys been doing this?
I've been doing this since before I got out of high school.
Oh, really? Okay, so just like 10 years then.
So
just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Milee, here's a question for you. For people listening who might not understand this world, what exactly is Horse Track Outfitters?
This is a business plan I made in college.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm not Milee, but Milee didn't want anything to do with the outfitting business, I'm quite sure.
Yeah.
But I've been around this since I was, my mom cooked in a camp, my dad guided a little bit. I've had a lot of family that guides. It's just been something I wanted to do, and I guided all over in Gardner, and I've guided a lot, and I've guided for a lot of different people, and I but I just got to the point is like I don't want to do this for wages.
Yeah.
I want to, but I got good experience. I worked for some great guys that really knew their craft and took good care of their clients, and I worked for some guys that were an absolute train wreck. And so it was pretty cool to try to take the best from everybody and try to incorporate that into your own deal. And I'd actually given up on owning one. And a buddy of mine called me and wanted me to go to Cody and help him. He was trying to buy a camp, and that's kind of how I got back into it. I never really quit, but I'd kind of given up on the whole, it's probably not going to happen. You get to an age where it's like, this isn't going to happen. And then bam, here we go. That was in like 2016.
So when you've been doing the treks into the park for obviously many years, and then you've also got, the hunting and guiding, which, obviously that's, you're guiding people, but it's a different form of guiding. So you're actually taking people actually hunting for big game. So how many weeks out of the summer do you guys actually do just the guided trips into the park on the horses?
So we operate inside Yellowstone Park from like May 15th through October 15th. The guys go into hunting camp Labor Day weekend to set up. And then I always knew there was a huge market for horseback riding in the fall because a lot of the outfitters just switch from horseback riding to hunting. And so a lot of times, there was no horseback riding opportunities or options for people. But after COVID, when all these families, they were still traveling because they didn't have to take their kids back to school. A lot of them were homeschooling. They switched to homeschooling, and or just a lot of families were like, well, we don't have to worry about getting our kids back, because it's school time. And they thought it was a great advantage, to see Yellowstone when it wasn't quite so busy and it was cooling off in the fall. So the animals, it was a better opportunity to see animals and wildlife. And I was like, man, I need more help in the fall. Because there was one year, I think it was 22 or 23. I was running rides. I think I rode almost every single day except for maybe like 5 days in September, taking rides all by myself because I didn't have any help. And, I was turning down people left and right because we did all private rides and, and I was like, man, I need some help next year. And it's just been crazy. I mean, now that we've gotten employees to work through the fall in the front country to continue the horseback riding, there's almost just as many people visiting Yellowstone in September as there is in July.
Yeah, it has really grown into the fall. So how booked are you guys this summer? Is there still time for people to, reserve trips with you guys yet this year?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We've got over probably 130 bookings right now.
Okay.
This is where my magic has happened in the business, is the marketing, the online social marketing, social media marketing is just exploded our business.
That's awesome.
I've really been pushing our business on TikTok, and we've got 27,000 followers on TikTok now.
Dang.
So it's, I invested a lot of money into SEO work on our website, redoing our website, paying for Google ads and everything. But then we invested in an online booking system, and that's been tremendously a lifesaver for me, because before, 3 years ago, I was keeping track of everybody's information on a piece of paper, pen and paper, and a calendar, and writing down everybody's heights and weights and experience levels. And then we added on the 2-hour ride option. And I was like, we need to change this because this is way too much.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's awesome. So then so obviously you're still taking reservations for this year for the horseback rides in the park. So Mike, do you have any room for any more hunting guides in trips this fall, for actually going hunting, as well, or are you booked up?
Well, the way the hunting goes is the people that are going this year had to have all their stuff done in January. They had to have all their applications in and stuff. And yeah, we're pretty well booked this year.
Okay.
We're in Wyoming. We hunt in Wyoming, and Wyoming's got a little different system for getting hunters in Montana. It's not as hunter friendly as Montana's system. And so it's harder to, it's just a little harder to navigate. Wyoming's got a great system. They do a great job of managing their wildlife. Wyoming's the western state that everybody's gravitating towards right now. A lot of the hunters, but we've got guys that are booked out into like 2030.
Nice.
But I pretty much just and we're small enough. We talk to everybody on the phone and figure out if they're a good fit. Our hunting camp's in the most remote place in the lower 48. There's a spot just down country from where I'm at where it's like 30 some odd miles in every direction before you even get to the end of a road. And that's not a paved road. That's so it's not for everybody. It's a unique experience. It still hunts really well. We hunt sheep and we hunt we hunt elk. We can hunt mule deer. I don't push the mule deer, but it's just and these are old school deals. This is like how Teddy Roosevelt hunted. This is old school horseback and mules and canvas tents and there's no cell service. There's no, the only motor you hear is an airplane flying over. There's no motorized. It's all raw wilderness and people need that. They don't realize they need that, but people need that. They need to unplug, and it's awesome because you get in there and these guys they can't ignore the rest of the group with their phone or their computer or their bullshit. They have, they get an opportunity to learn about these other guys on the trip with them, and because ultimately you wind up visiting with each other, and and everything's just a slow pace. You're traveling on a horse at 3 or 4 miles an hour everywhere you go, and everybody slows down, and it's an amazing place. It's untouched by man other than a few horse trails, and it's an amazing place.
Okay, well that's awesome. It sounds, like I said, it sounds like heaven to me.
Well, we're in the
I'll go be your camp coach this year.
We're in the very headwaters of the Yellowstone River, and
oh, neat.
Everybody thinks the Yellowstone River starts at Yellowstone Lake. Oh, no, it's we're 30 miles above the lake.
Wow. So then we obviously have the hunting guiding, we know that's kind of been your foundation. Of course, that Milee's been barrel racing, since she was probably old enough to be on a horse. And of course, this is kind of fun. And I think we should put this on when we do this. Mm-hmm. The fun part is we're sitting in your house interviewing you while you're not home. But is what's kind of cool about that is I'm sitting here looking at, all of your all around cowgirl champion, all your buckles, you've got bracelets, you've got awards and trophies like all over the house of Milee's obviously amazing success of barrel racing. And I also know you guys do team roping because there's pictures of you guys team roping and stuff like that. So I want to see how that's all connected for you guys too, and like what you've done. And it just seems like that's really growing for you guys as well, which is totally awesome. So share with us how you've shifted that into your world as well.
Well, Mike always told me, he's like, you don't have to ride your horse to make money. Ride your horse fast to make money. So that's kind of, because I honestly wasn't huge on buying the outfitting business. It was more his dream, because at that time it was more about the elk hunting camp. And then we looked into buying the Yellowstone concession permit to take the horseback rides inside Yellowstone Park. And we looked at one permit and it just wasn't the right fit. And then this other one came up like a year later and we're like, okay, I think we can do this.
And, a lot of people, they're like, well, we don't want to do business in Yellowstone. There's so many rules and there's so many regulations, and they're right. But everywhere you go has rules.
Absolutely.
There's, and you just have to accept the fact that, I'm willing to follow I'm willing. But the beauty of the ride deal in Yellowstone, we got 4 million people every summer coming to Yellowstone Park. So we don't need a lot of them. We just need a portion of them to come to us to have a pretty successful business.
Yeah.
And so, riding out of Yellowstone and Paradise Valley gives us a leg up over somebody, say at Lewistown, Montana, or Moscow, Idaho, or just because we have this pull of Yellowstone Park. And, my family's been doing stuff, in Yellowstone Park since the inception of the park. Our family sold cattle to the fort, because Mammoth was a soldier fort at one time.
Right.
Yellowstone was patrolled by the cavalry, and our family used to sell beef, and the Dalys, and even your family, Kelly. They ran steam engines and freighted into the park back in the pre-automobile days, and and so we've got a history in Yellowstone that nobody else has.
Yeah, very true.
So, Mike, Here's a quick question: is Daly's Lake named after your family?
Yes, yes. So the Dalys came into Paradise Valley in the 1860s and then settled there in the 1870s. And when they first came there, the east side of the Yellowstone River was the Indian reservation, and the west side was open for settlement. And the Dalys initially homesteaded there at Big Creek, where Mountain Sky Guest Ranch is now, and Arthur Blank's holdings there all along there. And yeah, and then when the Indians moved, when they moved the Indians down to Crow Agent, they built a Crow Agency at Absaroka, Montana. When they moved the Indians down there, then, you know, the Dalys were already there. They just went across the river and homesteaded at the lake. And then there's some stuff in the park like Daly Creek. You know, that's named after our family in the Gallatin. You know, the old timers were, you know, they did a lot of stuff with, you know, early management of the park, you know, with friendships and selling beef and meat to the, you know, selling stuff to the park. And so they've been our family's been interacting in Yellowstone forever,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and I know my dad and my grandpa built a lot of the roads up in this area as well.
Yeah.
Not, you know, so I mean, there was all of that too. I mean, like up through Trail Creek, Pine Creek, like up into the park, you know, I mean, it's just, yeah, there is a lot of our family history that is here. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was asking Kelly, who I think Mike's family must have started Daly's Lake, and then I found something about Ebenezer Daly and all these
Yeah.
different.
And so he was the old man, or whatever you want to call it, you know, that moved our family out here from Missouri in the 1860s during the Civil War, and came up on the Bozeman Trail, and you know, and you know, there's like pretty much everything in Paradise Valley that's named after, you know, the white guys. You know, we're related to them, or we're related to them at some point in time. You know, Stricklands, the Short Hills, the Bonnells, any of the old names. You know,
That's awesome.
we were
Yeah.
all interrelated.
One way or another, it seems like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing story there. I enjoy looking up the history here in Montana and trying to find out where things got started.
And we came, my family came to Paradise Valley, you know, chasing gold initially, and then, you know, and just realized there was, you know, the gold was such a boom and bust deal, but the agriculture was always going to be, people were always going to need to eat. And so that's kind of how they, you know, some of them went to Oregon and came back, some of them stayed, you know, but they really sat down and kind of established themselves in the early 1870s.
Yeah.
So, Mike, tell us about the performance horses.
That's Miley's deal.
That's Miley.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had horse track performance horses for over 20 years. Right out of college, I graduated with a bachelor's in animal science, and I got an office job for about 6 months right out of college, and I was like, yeah, I can't handle this. This is not for me. So I was originally when I was done with school, I was going to play around for about 6 months and just enjoy life. And then I didn't have any money to do that. So I ended up just going and getting a job. But I quickly found out that a 9-to-5 office job was not for me. So then I went to work for a horse trainer and started colts, and I just did that for a couple years, but it was really frustrating trying to train horses in Montana year round without a barn to ride in the wintertime. So,
And he didn't want that.
Yeah. And I ended up being like a house cleaner and a fix-it job person in the wintertime when it was too cold and miserable to ride. And I'm like, this is not what I got hired for. So I started putting together some of my own clientele. And when I had enough clients put together, I decided to go off on my own and start my own horse training business. So it's not easy being a horse trainer. When you're younger and you're just getting started, you'll pretty much take anything anybody will send you. My ultimate goal was just to train barrel horses. And, but when you get started, you got to get what you can get. And so I started a lot of colts and learned a lot of things, and had some close calls here and there, with horses and starting young colts. You never know what's on their mind. And so I had, I just realized that, after we got married and then we were starting a family, I was like, I can't afford to get hurt. And so then I kind of got pretty picky about what I was taking in for horsepower, what I was riding. And it was just, at that time I was giving a lot of riding lessons, and there's a lot more money in riding lessons than there is actually in horse training. Because
True.
there's a huge demand for, especially for young kids that, parents are looking for places to take their kids, because a lot of times, like in Park County especially, I was like the only one that had school horses where, I provided the horses for the kids, so that was a huge part of my income. And I love teaching, and I love seeing the progress of kids and the horses, and training. That's the big thing that a lot of people don't understand when they send horses in for training, is that they need to come and ride with you before the horse goes home or along the way. They need to, because it doesn't do any good for you to ride the horse and then you start this colt for 60 days and it's doing really awesome, and then the client takes it home for 2 weeks, doesn't ride it, doesn't touch it, and then they go and jump on the colt and it bucks them off. And then they come back and blame you because they say this colt bucked me off and you didn't do your job. And I'm like, a lot of people just don't understand riding, how young horses are,
No,
So Milee, how much is training and how much is instinct?
Oh, I like to start colts when they're 2 because they're more curious, they're more responsive. 2-year-olds are like kindergartners and the 3-year-olds are like teenagers. They're more rebellious and think they know everything, and they're like, I'm going to do it my way, and I don't really care what you think. So there's a lot of times I prefer to start them when they're a little bit younger, put like 30 days of riding on them and then turn them out for a year and let them grow up and then get them back in. And then they come back like within a week. I mean, they're like in the same spot where they were a year ago.
Yeah.
Rather than waiting till they're 3 and they're stronger and their attitudes are a lot different. They kind of lose that curiosity and get more rebellious, I guess, as they get older.
So how many horses do you train at a time right now?
Oh, so in the wintertime, we're snowbirds now, so we go to Arizona for 3 to 4 months in the winter. That was always my life goal for my horse training business, was to be able to winter in Arizona, because there's an amazing opportunity to go to barrel races or team ropings or breakaway ropings every day of the week down here for 4 months.
Yeah, nice.
It's just, I don't like the snow. I don't like the cold. And I hated riding in a barn for 6 months out of the year in Montana. So we've been coming to Arizona now for 6 winters, and it's just been an amazing opportunity. It's opened a lot of doors for us, just getting to know more people in the rodeo industry, and just expanding your horizons, because there's a lot of circles in rodeo and horse training, and it's just being in the right spot at the right time, meeting the right people that can open doors for you to ride more horses, ride better quality horses.
So with you guys, you've got the horse trail riding, you've got the hunting, you've got the barrel horses, and you're doing all that type of thing. So what's the hardest part for you guys, pulling it all together as, a couple, as a business or businesses? Because we understand being a couple of business, plus you've got 2 young girls.
Yes.
But what is the hardest part as the girls?
Time management and try not to get burned out.
Yeah.
Just because there's a lot. And, I also do a lot of social media marketing, online businesses, and, I'm all about multiple streams of income. So
that's huge.
Time management is huge, and, communication and designating things. That's one thing that I'm constantly working on, is designation, because I'm only one person, and I've learned that over the years that I can't do everything, because it gets you burn out, and then nobody's happy.
You're right. Well, so when you guys look at all of this, I mean, when you're looking ahead, what do you guys feel like what are you really building towards? Are you looking, towards, building a legacy for, the girls to take over? Are you looking to eventually semi-retire? Are you just want to keep building until you literally, you're going to be one of those 85-year-old women out there still riding her horses, and Mike's going to still be out there team roping him when he's 90?
Yeah, we're definitely building a legacy business, and as far as riding in Yellowstone, it's, you never know how long it's going to last. It's, we have to renew our permit every 10 years. Everybody does, all concessionaires, and, we're just trying to preserve the Western way of life, and show people, it's the Yellowstone show has been huge for our business, huge for, all of Montana, just because everybody started watching Yellowstone, and then they wanted to come out here and see it,
Yeah, it's true.
Most people don't understand that it's not actually filmed anywhere near Yellowstone Park.
Park it off.
It's
I think I even did a quick segment a couple of years ago on our social media stuff because people were everywhere I would go. People would ask me questions because they all knew I grew up here. I'm from here. And it's so funny because people be like, and when I say, well, you're from Livingston, and then it'd be like, well, where's that? I'm like, okay, we're the entrance to Yellowstone. Like, oh my gosh, Yellowstone. And they'd freak out,
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. I remember I came up and I drove up to the top of Pine Creek and I was showing people like this is where they're staying the park, where it's all filmed. I'm like, but it's not even filmed here. I'm like, you'll see, like none of this even looks right or anything else. So it was kind of fun, to dispel the myths of Yellowstone to some degree. So yeah. But speaking on that, because we feel like, the show is kind of, it's a mythical, show compared to what the real life of us living here. Although there's a few things I think I would make a good Beth. I don't know.
Well, we don't have near as much homicide as in regular agriculture and outfitting as Yellowstone would like people to think,
Right. Oh, thank goodness for that, right? But I mean, so I always have like the one silly question that I'm sure that you get asked. So what's the most silly question that people ask you besides how do I go to the bathroom when we're on a 4-hour trail ride? What's your silliest question that people ask you guys when you take them on trail rides?
Well, like when we ride at the ranch, people don't realize, people from the West that aren't from the West don't realize that it's rude to ask somebody how big your ranch is.
Yep.
You don't walk up and ask a woman how much she weighs or how old she is, and these tourists, bless them, but at the same time, they don't realize that, it's a little bit of an insult. I mean, not that we own the ranch we ride on, but they don't understand Western culture at all.
No, they don't.
I mean, they don't understand that it's an insult to come up and ask a person, how many cattle do you have? How many horses do you have? How many acres do you have? Because, it might be, they almost equate that to, oh, well, you got this 10,000 acre ranch. So you're wealthy. No, these guys own these ranches. They're not wealthy. They're wealthy on paper and they're wealthy in a quality of life, but they're, but it's, and that's one of the huge misconceptions is that, and we really work like at the ranch, the ranch belongs to my extended family. We've got a great arrangement with them, but, but we're also trying to show these folks when we're riding, you love this place and this place is beautiful. Well, this place has been an actively operated cattle ranch for 150 years.
Yeah.
So the next time you see a snippet on TV about, cattle methane and ranchers abusing the West, remember this place because it's not abused. These people take better care of it than, I mean, every rich guy that comes to Montana and buys a ranch, the first thing he does is bulldozes the whole goddamn thing into a coulee, builds a house out on a knob, puts his landing strip in, forgets about the people that live around him. I mean, they totally go away from all the stuff that makes, old time Montana cool, family, community, they don't, because they're businessmen from elsewhere. They're big money people. And what always amazes me is how Montanans could have kept this place beautiful. It's just a good thing we didn't screw it up for them before they got here. And that's how they treat us.
Yeah, it is.
And then they don't understand why, and so much of this new Montana ranch ownership is all this posturing and all this pompous bullshit. And, and then they don't understand why none of the local kids want to work for them. Well, hell, you can go work on half of these corporate-owned ranches in Paradise Valley, but if your kids want to be in 4-H, they can't have a calf. They can't have a pig. So what's the benefit of dragging your family onto this place to live and work there if your kids can't participate in ranch kid stuff, if they can't be in 4-H, if they can't have a steer, if they can't have a horse?
Yeah. Well, the sad part is our 4-H life how we all grew up, I mean, it's almost non-existent, which is very scary and very sad. I mean, Jesse sees me like literally almost come to tears sometimes with when I tell him like how we grew up and like everything we are involved in and all the things we had. And it's not there for these kids now. And it's super depressing and heartbreaking that, our way of life, is not what it was, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or however far back you want to go. But it's what I see you guys doing and trying to like still capture that is, I mean, that's why I said we're calling this Built in the West, because we want to focus on people like you guys that are have been here, that are building these legacies, that are trying to hold on to what Montana built. And you guys are part of what Montana has built, and being here and trying to hold on to what Montana really is all about at the end of the day, for sure.
Well, and the sad part about Paradise Valley, Montana, you can pick your poison, pick any state you want that's got fresh water and a view. This money's coming. These people are coming, and they're gonna buy it because you look at agriculture. The average ranch owner is 65 years old, and there ain't no way they're gonna let these kids run it, because these kids there ain't no way that my kid that's been working for me for the last 40 years is smart enough to run this. But and that's that I'm being a little bit rude there, but it's like, and then they get to the point, their kids have suffered, they've struggled and never, it's, agriculture's a way you got to love it. And
you do.
And this guiding and this stuff, I tell my guides that come to work that want to make a career out of it, I tell them, I was like, man, if you're in this for the money, you've already missed the boat.
Yeah.
Because there's just parts of it that, money can't buy. And,
No.
And the tough part is for like small operators like Milee and I, you get the owner of the Atlanta Falcons come in and he buys 30,000 acres in Paradise Valley, and he's paying $30-40 million and up for these ranches. Well, Milee and I would love to buy a section of ground. Well, there ain't no way a mere mortal can afford that anymore.
No, there's not.
And so they're a blessing and a curse. They're a blessing because most of them aren't going to develop the land, but the common, working guy that wants to expand his operation is in really a tough position, because he can't compete with, if the guy's, with some guy that's making his money isn't made in Montana.
No. And that's more common than not, especially these last few years of the places being bought here. I mean, it makes it very hard for the locals to buy, to grow, to expand, and that's and it's not just in Montana, it's a lot of places.
No,
but
it's everywhere,
It is, sadly. Yeah, it is. Do you want to do that?
Yeah. So, Mike, I'd like to have you come back on the podcast and do some history podcast, because I bet you have some really good stories to share.
So I'm a huge, there isn't much about Montana history from the Mountain Man era to World War I that I haven't studied or read about extensively. I mean, I've read everything that's probably published about the Custer fight and the Wild Bunch. Kid Curry and his guys up in Zortman, Montana, and and just.
Did your dad live in Zortman?
Yeah, for a while. I cowboyed up there and worked up there for a while, and but there's Montana's history is so amazing, and they're not teaching it to our kids at school.
They're not.
They're blowing by it. I mean, they tell you about Jeanette Rankin, but they don't tell you that her family was one of the largest. They had one of the largest ranches in Montana at one time, and but that they will tell you, well, she voted against World War II or whatever. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they they don't tell you about any of the Indians other than and the fact that Livingston and Paradise Valley was prime. They don't tell you about Lewis and Clark. You know, that when you go stand at where Depew Spring Creek dumps into the Yellowstone, that Lewis and Clark stood there once upon a time and looked down that valley. You know, they don't teach our kids anything about what makes Montana so special. You know, the gold and the cattle and the Indians and
the sapphire, and
the whole
copper.
thing.
Yeah,
and it's like, I just think there's a lot of really cool stuff that, we had Saxon Friar and Livingston for years, and you could pick anybody that did something in Montana and find a book there and read about them and learn about them.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be an Indian chief or a cattle baron or a copper baron, you could learn. And I just think that our kids are really missing out on some cool stuff,
They are.
Well, let's try to tell as much as we can through this podcast.
Yeah, let's definitely plan on that.
I would love to have you come back.
Yeah.
We talk.
I didn't realize you were such a history buff, so that's kind of fun.
I'm too. I'm a researcher.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a section here. We call it rapid fire. Just really quick questions, quick answers. So, Mike, favorite horse you've ever worked with?
I had a horse named Thomas that I got from the Robinson Ranch when I was a young man. And I mean, this horse bucked me off all the time. And I just stuck with him, and I convinced Robinsons to let me bring him home and ride him in the mountains and keep him for a season. And I ultimately wound up buying him, hunted on him for, 15 years. And he was, and amongst my friends and the people I worked with, the horse was kind of he was just an awesome horse. And so that's probably mine.
Okay. So early mornings or late nights?
Oh, earlier the better.
Okay. One word that describes ranch life.
Awesome.
Best ride you've ever taken?
Oh, I like taking, there's just so many, but, Anderson Mountain and the Absaroka Beartooth is unbelievable. The thoroughfare between Cody and Jackson Hole, and they all have their times. Every place has got, there's no place worse to ride than up the Slough Creek Wagon Road in July or August. Mm-hmm. But in the fall, it's the coolest ride on the planet. They all, and I've been fortunate. I've ridden a lot of country between Cody and Big Sky, Montana. I don't really have a favorite, but there's just because there's just so many good ones,
Okay. One thing tourists always get wrong.
One thing they always get wrong.
How long it takes to drive through Yellowstone Park.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one.
All right. Coffee or whiskey?
Tea.
Oh.
Sunrise or sunset in Montana?
I like sunrise because that's when I make my money. And
awesome. Well, if someone is listening right now, wants to experience what you've built, Mike and Milee, where do they go and how do they connect with you?
They can go to our website at horsetrackoutfitters.com, or else we're also on social media on TikTok and Instagram at Horse Track Outfitters.
Okay, cool. Well, do you guys have anything else you want to add? Or we can always have you back again, too, and do this again. You guys have lots to share.
Yeah, it's a bucket list experience to go horseback riding in Yellowstone Park, because there's very few people that see Yellowstone backcountry. Most
people, all they think about of the park is traffic and congestion, and 99% of what we do, we get 30 minutes from the vehicle and you're all by yourself. You've got it all to yourself, with the exception of a few places. And most people most tourists aren't willing to slow down enough to enjoy Yellowstone. And, to go on these rides, you've got to commit. You've got to just take one day out of your schedule, and this is all we're going to do that day, is go ride and, and go and just do things at 3 miles an hour. But so many people, they book a trip out west, and in 5 days they want to see the world's largest ball of twine and Mount Rushmore and Glacier and Yellowstone and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Well, at what point are you actually stopping to see any of it?
Right.
They're just blasting along and and we've actually have, Miley's got people who've ridden with her multiple years, and we'll take them a different place every year. And we're trying to do some things with some local B&Bs where, like, if we get a group and rather than going on a conventional pack trip, they rent an Airbnb and we go on a different ride every day for 4 or 5 days. And you have the benefit of a comfortable bed and a warm shower every evening. And, we just haven't had the right people hook up for that. But that's probably one thing we would like to do. Our business is as big as we wanted.
Yeah, I love it.
We've grown 30% a year the last 4 years, and now we're at a point where, we don't want any more. We're happy where we're at. We just want to maintain and keep doing what we're doing. And and the beauty of this job, we can take our kids riding. We can spend time with our kids. We can, if you got a family from out of town, you can always work somebody in with you to go spend a day doing what you do. Instead of going to the park, going to the local park and dealing with everybody else.
No, that's very true. Well, let's definitely plan to have you guys back. We'll probably let you get through the summer because I know you guys have got it crazy going on. But I would love to have you guys back this fall. And if you have time in between, it'd be fun to do a history one. But I want to do another segment maybe in between hunting and all the guides and trips and everything else, and have you guys back because I feel like you guys have so much to share. Because this is exactly why like I said, this is why we're doing this, because it's what's built, in the West and for the West, by the people, for the people, and just a lot of things that people only dream about. And you guys are doing those things, and you've got amazing values and things that you're building, and I love that, and that's what we're doing here. So we appreciate you both for taking the time to be on here and share an hour out of your day to share with us about what you guys really do.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Out where the mountains meet the sky so wide, where dust and dreams still ride side by side, where builders rise before the dawn and leaders stand when hope feels gone. From ranch roads to the city lights, from oil rigs to start-up nights, there's a spirit here you can't outguess, the kind of grit that's built the West. This is built in the West, where the bold invest, where the dreamers ride and the thinkers test, where opportunity knocks and the fearless say yes. The builders, the thinkers, the leaders of the West. Some build empires out of steel and stone. Some build ideas the world has never known. Some build businesses from the ground with nothing but a vision and a stubborn sound. They risk, they rise, they learn, they fall, then saddle back up and answer the call, because the frontier never left our chest. It's alive in the heart that's built in the West. This is built in the West, where the bold invest, where the dreamers ride and the thinkers test, where opportunity knocks and the fearless say yes. The builders, the thinkers, the leaders of the West. It's the rancher, the founder, the risk taker too, the coder, the banker, the ones breaking through. It's the towns, the ideas, the future inside, where the frontier lives on in the minds that ignite. runs deep, where the brave chase the fire others never could keep, where the frontier lives on in the hearts of the best, the builders,